Welcome. Today is Saturday of the second week in Advent. Two candles are lit. We're continuing our story of Tabitha's travels, and today's chapter is titled The Priest. Seth forced one eye open and whispered, "Girl, what is it?" "We must leave at once," Tabitha answered. "Leave," the innkeeper mumbled. "Why would we want to leave?" "I have seen it in the sky. Jehovah is calling to me." Seth had both eyes halfway opened now, and sat up on his sleeping mat. He shook his head slowly, then sighed. "Show me this thing in the sky." Stepping carefully around the sleeping bodies of the guests, Tabitha led Seth out through the front door and into the street. Seth looked up at the strange star in the sky and gasped. "What is this?" he cried. Tabitha was also craning her neck to see the star. "I prayed to Jehovah for his help," she said, "and this star appeared. I did not think he would answer my prayers so quickly." Seth just stared at the sight, his mouth hanging open. "I do not know if Jehovah answers the prayers of small girls," he said, "but this star truly is a miracle. We must follow it and see where it leads." Tabitha had scowled at Seth's lack of faith, but now grinned at his agreement to travel with her. Seth woke his wife and explained what was going on, and though she accepted the news quickly, she didn't seem pleased. Then Seth packed a bag with some food and water, grabbed a couple blankets, and led Tabitha out the back door. There he unhitched a camel that looked to Tabitha like an old, worn-out rag. Seth clicked his tongue, and the camel lowered himself unsteadily to the ground. They climbed atop, and then with another click of Seth's tongue, the animal lurched to his feet, and they headed up the streets of Jericho. Once outside the city, Seth kicked his heels and the camel trotted down the roadway. "Where are we going?" Tabitha asked at last. "I do not know," Seth answered. "I only follow the star." He pointed to the sky and added, "It seems to be drawing us toward the west." "Toward Jerusalem?" Tabitha gasped, knowing that's where the Romans took her father. Seth shook his head. "I do not know. If it wants to take us to Jerusalem, this is a strange path to lead us. There's a very fine road to the north of Jericho." Tabitha wondered what all that meant, but was too sleepy to put her thoughts into order. Sitting in front of Seth, her head began to nod, and even before Seth had turned the camel to the right and headed off the road up into the hills, Tabitha was sound asleep. She woke hours later as the sun was edging up over the hill they had climbed in the night. Tabitha blinked several times, trying to figure out what she was doing on a smelly old camel. Oh, and then finally remembered. "Where are we?" she asked, rubbing her eyes and yawning. "I do not know," Seth answered. Tabitha spun her head around and looked him in the eye. "You don't know where we are?" Seth shook his head. "No, I rarely leave Jericho, and I've never been in these hills." "Then why are we here?" Seth shrugged his shoulders. "I only followed the star," he said. "I did not ask it where it was taking me." Tabitha had forgotten all about the star, and now looked around the sky to find it, but it was gone. A moment later Seth said, "Perhaps the star was leading us to this compound." Tabitha spun back around to look straight in front of the camel. There she saw several small buildings and a barn made of wood. The barn had a corral around it where cows grazed on dew-covered grass. A rooster was crowing to wake up his master, but the master was already there, an old, old man throwing grain to some chickens. As they approached, the man looked up, and his hand went to the sword hanging at his side. "Who is that?" he called. "Who is there?" Seth stopped the camel a safe distance away. "It is Seth, an innkeeper from Jericho, and a small child searching for her father." The old man relaxed. Another homeless child, he said, and Tabitha wondered what he meant. Come then, and rest your bones at our breakfast table. Seth clicked his tongue, and the camel knelt down, allowing the two riders to slide off its back. The old man came forward with his hand extended towards Seth. I am Zechariah, he said, a priest in the house of God. And I am Seth, a man of no importance, and son of no one of fame. Jehovah cares not for the fame of your father, the priest said. You are important to him, just as you are. Zechariah turned his attention to Tabitha. And who is this? He asked. My name is Tabitha. Another lost child comes from the night, Zechariah said, shaking his head. What strange events are taking place these days. What other lost child have you seen? Tabitha asked. A boy of 10 who was separated from his shepherd family. Tabitha gasped. Jotham, she shouted. Why, yes, Zechariah said. How do you know of him? A brown mouse made 5 trips across the compound carrying scraps of food to his den as Tabitha explained about all the adventures that had brought her so far from her family. As she was finishing her story, Zechariah led them both inside where they met his wife, Elizabeth, and sat at a wooden table to eat a breakfast of parched wheat. Then I saw a strange star last night, Tabitha concluded, and it led us here to you. Zechariah was quiet for a moment and then asked Seth, By what route did you travel last night? Seth's forehead wrinkled up as he thought. Well, we only followed the star, and it brought us up the ravine near Tolbeth, then by the peaks of Rosh Shamra. Zechariah sighed. Then you wouldn't have seen Jotham and Nathan as you were coming up the hill to the south of Jericho. They were going down the hill to the north. They are even now staying at the former house of Silas. We missed him, Tabitha cried. We were so close. Yes, child, Zechariah said, but my mind tells me it is not Jotham you need to worry about, but your father. This is so, Tabitha said sullenly. Now that we know Jotham is safe, I must help my father. But still, it would have been nice to see him, she sighed. Why did he travel back to Jericho? So Zechariah told her how Jotham had been kidnapped by Decah and how Caleb and Nathan had rescued the boy. And now they are safe in Jericho, he concluded. As for you, he added, looking at Tabitha, someone must help you get to Jerusalem immediately. The priest turned his gaze to Seth, who said, My inn is full, and my duties many, but I will gladly take the girl where she needs to go. Zechariah looked at his wife. As for me, my years are many, and my bones are old, but they have a few more journeys to Jerusalem left in them. You go back to your inn, Seth. I shall accompany the girl. Tabitha wondered if this old man could really keep up with her, but she didn't say anything. Seth bowed and said, Your kindness will be remembered. He rested a few more minutes, then Tabitha gave him a hug goodbye, and he headed off down the hill on his camel. Well now, child, Zechariah said when Seth had left, do your legs have a good day's walk in them, or must we take donkeys? Tabitha thought her legs would probably walk twice as far as his, but she only said, My legs will be happy to make the journey. Then give me until noon to tend to my animals and other business, and then we shall leave. Everything was moving so fast that Tabitha wasn't even sure where she was or who she was with. But she returned to the house and slept on a mat in the kitchen until mid-morning. After a long night's journey, your sleep must have felt good, Zechariah's wife Elizabeth said when Tabitha awoke. Tabitha stretched and yawned. It did indeed, she said. A baby cried behind her, and Tabitha spun around in surprise. I did not see a baby here before. Who does it belong to?" "It is mine," Elizabeth said as she sewed closed a hole in an old tunic. Tabitha looked at the woman, who was obviously many years older than Tabitha's grandmother had been when she died, and said, "It is your baby?" she asked, and then, with no intention of being rude, she added, "How can that be?" Elizabeth smiled and kept working. "Come, sit with me," she said, "and I will tell you a most miraculous story." Does God really do that? Does He really put stars in the sky to guide us, or perform other miracles to show us the way? Yes, because it's a promise He made to us. Isaiah puts it this way: "I will lead the blind by ways they have not known. Along unfamiliar paths I will guide them. I will turn the darkness into light before them, and make the rough places smooth. These are the things I will do. I will not forsake them." Those who have been faithful to God for a while can probably tell of times when He has miraculously guided them. Maybe not with a star in the sky, although I'm sure that's happened a few times, but in any number of unexpected ways. In fact, when we're wondering how God will guide us in the future, about the only thing we can be sure of is that it will be in a way we never expected. Maybe even in a way He's never done before. Tabitha knew from the moment she saw the star that God was at work. When we look at the manger of Christmas, we know that as well. But if we're faithful in following the path we know God has set for us, there will also be times in our lives when He will guide us in wondrous and miraculous ways we never dreamed of.